South Korea may be one of the world's most prominent nuclear-powered nations and a major exporter of reactor technology. But it is facing a nuclear crossroads once again. Before taking office in June, President Lee Jae-myung called nuclear power dangerous and unsustainable. Now, the government has put it back on the agenda with plans to power the country with nuclear energy, alongside solar, wind, and other renewables through the 11th Electric Power Supply Plan.
작년에 이제 세운 계획이 지금부터 2037년까지 원자력만 놓고 보면 그건 대형 원자로 2개를 짓고 그다음에 소형 원자로가 이제 저희가 말하는 이 ISMR을 1기를 짓는 거죠. 11차 그 전력 수급 계획은 양당이 합의해서 지금 한 거기 때문에 그거를 바꾼 계획은 없어요.
That means 2 new nuclear plants and 1 SMR are moving forward as planned, welcomed by some, concerning to others. South Korea has been studying SMRs since late 1990, when the International Atomic Energy Agency first surveyed demand for small, safer, and cheaper reactors. That led to South Korea's own design for an export-oriented small reactor known as Systems Integrated Modular Advanced Reactor, or SMART for short.
2009년에 제가 이제 인볼브가 돼서 같이 스마트를 개발을 하게 됐고 2012년 7월 4일 날 미국 독립기념일이라는 우연하게 날짜가 같은데 그날 이제 세계 최초로 일체형 원자로로서는 처음으로 스탠다드 디자인 어프로를 받게 됩니다.
But the Fukushima accident prompted further safety improvements.
스마트는 그 PWR 베이스의 기술입니다. 중요한 건 해결료, 아까 보여드린 그 2m 되는 해결료 기술인데 그것도 대형 경수형 원자로에서 쓰고 있는 해결료를 그대로 가져와서 높이만 하프 사이즈로 만든 겁니다. 그러니까 그 기술 자체는 프로븐 테크놀로지를 쓰는 거죠. 근데 세이프티 시스템은 아까 보신 그 시험 장치를 통해서 확인을 할 수가 있는 거죠.
Even without building its own, South Korea says its SMR design is export-ready. The first country to show interest was Saudi Arabia. Other countries are also looking. South Korea already has a track record exporting nuclear reactors. At home, a new version called ISMR is under development. It's touted as slightly more powerful than SMART, and 4 modules together can provide about 680 megawatts of power.
스마트는 100 메가와트 일렉트릭이고 ISMR은 170 메가와트 일렉트릭인데 4개 모듈을 하나의 셋으로 보통 생각을 하고 있습니다. 그러면은 요 ISMR 같은 경우는 4 곱하기 170이 되기 때문에 한 680 메가와트 규모의 전력이라든지 열을 사용할 수 있는 그러한 어플리케이션을 고려를 하는 거기에 이제 ISMR을 놓고 100 메가와트, 200 메가와트 이런 소형 규모에 대해서는 스마트를 집어넣는 게 좋지 않겠느냐 이렇게 2트랙 전략으로.
That is the planned site of South Korea's small modular reactor industrial complex in Gyeongju, a project set to develop homegrown SMR technology and pave the way for exports, with the goal of making the country a global leader in next-generation nuclear power.
대형 원자로에 비해서 경제성도 있기 때문에 SMR 국가산업단지는 꼭 필요한 산업단지인데 우리 경주 같은 경우에는 한국수력 원자력 발전소가 있고 그다음에 월성 원자력이 있고 또 SMR로 관련된 저희들이 이제 연구단지가 이거 국내의 유일한 우리 원자력 연구단지입니다. R&D 연구단지가.
The chief of Gyeongju City's Nuclear Energy Policy Division brushed aside safety concerns, noting that the city already houses 6 large nuclear reactors.
여기는 소형 원전이기 때문에 대형 원전에 비해서는 안전성이 높기 때문에 전혀 없다고는 못하지만 대형 원전보다는 부담이 훨씬 더 적다고 보겠죠.
But not everyone agrees. Environmentalists are demanding the government scrap new nuclear plants, large or small.
폐기물은 결국은 저희들이 그거 갖다가 결국 안고 가야 되는 거고 사고라는 건 언제 어떻게 터질지 모르는 거고
기존 원자력 발전소도 위험하고 또 수명이 너무 오래된 것도 많은데 또 새 거를 만들어 가지고 또 다른 위험을 초래한다는 건 안 된다고 생각하고.
About 100 kilometers away in this village, the view is quite the opposite. Here in Yeongdo, community support plans for the expected construction of new reactors, saying it will create jobs and revive the local economy. Devastated by wildfires earlier this year, it was chosen as a nuclear plant site back in 2011. The project was scrapped under former President Moon Jae-in, who pledged to phase out nuclear energy. But with the government now reviving plans for 2 new reactors, residents hope the project will finally take shape and benefit the county like it did in neighboring Ulchin, where several nuclear plants are in operation.
영도군에서는 할 수 있는 게 아무것도 없죠. 주민들도 그러잖아요. 도대체 군에서 한 게 뭐가 있느냐. 또 다른 측면에서는 받아가지고 뭐 줄 바에야 그거 뭐 누구든지 할 수 있는 거 아니냐.
정권이 바뀔 때마다 이게 오락가락하니까 주민들도 헷갈립니다. 앞전 민주당 정권에서 문재인 정권이라든가 신재생 이 원전을 없애기 위해서 신재생을 많이 자기네들이 그걸 했잖아요. 저 개인적인 생각은 이 민주당 정권을 잡고 있는 데서 원전이 과연 좋을 수 있을까?
Experts say balancing energy needs with safety and public opinion is the government's biggest challenge. But there is another big hurdle for the country that operates 26 nuclear power plants. What to do with 700 tons of spent nuclear fuel generated each year.
지금 이제 발생되고 있는 사용 후 해결료 같은 경우에는 원자력 발전소 내에 있는 임시 저장 수조에 지금 임시 보관되고 있거든요. 그렇기 때문에 지금 이제 발전소 내에 있는 임시 저장 수조가 이제 포화가 임박함에 따라서 저희는 이제 향후에 사용 후 해결료 처분을 준비해야 되기 때문에 관련한 여러 가지 기술들 그리고 실증 기술들 이런 절차들을 포함한 여러 가지 기술들을 다 준비를 하고 있는 상황입니다.
In 2002, a small-scale underground research laboratory was launched to study safe disposal. Soon, this will move to a new site 500 meters underground, similar to a high-level waste facility. The plan is for a disposal period of about 10,000 years. It's part of the prize to secure an ambitious energy future. From the ashes of the Korean War in the 1950s, South Korea built itself into a technology leader. Now, it doesn't only want to add nuclear and small modular reactors to that list of accomplishments, it also wants a leading position in this heated SMR race.
Behind me is the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. It's India's largest nuclear power facility, located near the southernmost point of India's mainland. It's one of 7 plants in the country with a total capacity of about 8 gigawatts of energy. But by 2032, India wants to almost triple its nuclear power capacity. To do this, India is investing heavily in homegrown nuclear technology and pushing to increase the role of the private sector. But not everyone is on board. The fishing community of Idintakere in the state of Tamil Nadu has lived and breathed these seas for generations. But on the horizon lurks what many here see as a threat to their lives and livelihoods. The Kudankulam nuclear power plant sits just kilometres from the Idintakere coastline. Fisherman Suse Fernando worries the facility could damage local marine life and food sources and endanger his family's health.
அதாவது இந்த அணுவலை ஒலை கூட மக்களுக்கு ரொம்ப பாதிக்கப்படுது. இந்த பாதிப்பு மக்களால் தாங்க முடியல. நீங்கள் இதை அகற்றுங்க. மக்களுக்கு இது கூடின மக்கள் வாழக்கூடிய இடங்கள் சனத்தொகை கூடின இடம். அதனால் இதில் வாழக்கூடிய மக்களை ரொம்ப பாதிக்கப்படுது. நீங்கள் அதை அகற்றுங்க. பயம் எங்களுக்கு அதை வச்சு கிட்னி ப்ராப்ளம் சகல ப்ராப்ளங்கள் வருது. கேன்சர் அதிகமாக.
The villagers have protested against the plant since it was planned decades ago. They were not alone.
I am very much worried about the safety of this Kudankulam nuclear power plant.
SP Udaya Kumar is one of India's most high-profile anti-nuclear activists.
Because we are a highly and densely populated country, we do have growing need for energy, that is for sure. And we need to create energy, but that energy should not harm our environment, should not hurt our people, should not kill our future.
He spearheaded the movement against the power plant and has over the years organised massive protests and hunger strikes. They may have delayed the project, but they did little to stop the Kudankulam plant's construction, nor its ongoing expansion. Work is underway at this plant, which has 2 reactors, to add 4 more reactors. This expansion is part of the government's ambitious aim to increase India's nuclear power capacity by 10-fold to 100 gigawatts by 2047. Nuclear power is increasingly seen as a viable solution to India's insatiable energy appetite. The country's electricity demand is expected to grow at an average annual rate of 6.3% a year over the next 3 years, according to the International Energy Agency. That's more than 50% higher than the global average. India is currently heavily dependent on fossil fuels that are dirty to produce and costly to import. And the government has set a target for India to become net zero by 2070. But wind and solar power can only go so far.
If we want to reduce our carbon footprint, perhaps going bigger into nuclear power is a better bet because it is something which is proven. It has worked for 50 plus years. India has its own tech as well. And that may be an easier way or a better way to reduce the role of coal.
The government operates all the country's nuclear plants, but it wants to open the industry up to the private sector and invest in new technology like small modular reactors.
I expect small modular reactors to be very much part of the net zero route going forward from here.
India has allocated more than $2 billion towards developing 5 homegrown SMRs by 2033. The idea is to use them to repurpose retiring coal-based power plants and help energy-intensive industries cut emissions.
Carbon tax and carbon footprint is going to be a big issue when there is an export issues for our industries like cement and iron and so on and so forth. So if they are keen to have their export business in tune with what it is going on and what is going on in the future, they have to resort to clean energy.
Dr. Rama Rao says India's already developed its so-called Bharat small reactors, based on the country's existing pressurized heavy water reactors. They are seen as a nearer-term solution while other SMRs are being developed. But whether BSR or SMR, a major plus for these miniature reactors is how they can be made safer.
The technology has to be such that even if there is a beyond design basis kind of an accident or an event, the engineered safety system in the reactor would cool the reactor, would not allow the events that happened in Fukushima or other places.
But activist Udaya Kumar isn't convinced that newer technology can eliminate all the dangers.
When you plug in all these nuclear small modular reactors all over, what are we going to do with the waste? How are we going to safeguard?
His concerns especially resonate here, in an area no stranger to seismic activity, where villagers fear an earthquake and resulting tsunami could cause a meltdown at the Kudankulam plant. This is a monument that's dedicated to the memory of the hundreds of people who were killed here in the town of Kanyakumari alone in the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. It's located here in the Tsunami Memorial Park, about 30 kilometers along the coast from the Kudankulam nuclear power plant. It's a reminder that the area is at risk of natural disasters, although officials insist that the plant has been built to withstand tsunamis and earthquakes. But without safety guarantees, it's a risk the community has to keep taking, faced with the reality of the country's growing clean energy needs.
In a pivot away from conventional nuclear plants, dozens of small modular reactor projects are being developed around the world, including here in France. North of France's second city, Marseille, with the summer calls of cicadas as a background sound, a campus for startups stands among the pines of southern France. Among the tech companies based here is Blue Capsule, their core agenda developing a next-generation nuclear reactor that is smaller, customizable and purportedly safer than the current ones. These would only have a third of the generating capacity of traditional nuclear reactors, but they can be mass-produced in factories, transported more easily and assembled on site. Blue Capsule President Edouard Orcade says a key aim is to make nuclear power more affordable and accessible to better compete with gas and coal.
We want to be versatile in terms of how we provide energy to the customer. We want to provide heat in various forms and electricity, so versatility is one of our great selling points. Adaptability, so we want to get very close to end customer and we want to go abroad.
Picture a world where electricity is always affordable and plentiful.
Another French contender is nuclear startup Stellaria. Chief Executive Nicolas Breton says nuclear power offers a more reliable source of cleaner energy than other renewable options.
The existing nuclear power is very large power plants that are not so flexible, and solar and wind are intermittent power. They are not the best for digital and for industries who need really 24/7 energy. So what we provide is 24/7 power, on-demand power. Power has to be produced always on time, just on time.
He's referring to skyrocketing electricity demand, largely from data centers, the backbone of the digital world. SMRs hold the promise of meeting the power and cooling needs of the server sites.
It enables having clean, cheap, and very dense energy, as we also need dense data centers. So that's why they have, liquid cooling. And for that they need a lot of energy.
The excitement for SMRs is palpable, but development will not be fast. Ludovic Dupin is from the French Nuclear Energy Society, a non-profit association of scientists and researchers focused on nuclear policy. He explains how nuclear research has a long lead-up time.
À partir de 2022, il y a une relance du nucléaire, des gros réacteurs avec les EPR2 et aussi des small modular reactors. Et là, il y a eu un appel à projet. Il y a eu énormément de startups qui ont répondu. On a eu une quinzaine de candidats, 11 qui ont été récompensés par le gouvernement pour aller encore plus loin dans leur recherche. Mais le fait est qu'il faut remettre en place tout cet écosystème d'innovation et de recherche. Et donc, effectivement, cette structuration prend un peu de temps. Donc, on espère voir les premiers réacteurs, les démonstrateurs, pas avant 2030-2035.
France is one of the world's nuclear heavyweights, second only to the United States in terms of the number of nuclear power plants. But conventional nuclear plants and small modular reactors are not mutually exclusive, and France hopes to leverage the best of both. The new nuclear reactors are not intended to replace France's classic power plants. The traditional nuclear sites are crucial for the country's energy independence. In fact, France produces so much power that it's the world's largest net exporter of electricity. France has always had a place in Europe's nuclear heartland, but now it also has a fertile space for the growth of new nuclear innovations, as it prepares for a revolution in its nuclear renaissance.
Like our neighbours in France, energy security in the United Kingdom is also a top priority. And with low-carbon electricity targets looming, the UK government wants nuclear power to provide 20 to 25% of the electricity mix by 2050. But with large-scale nuclear power projects historically coming in late and over budget, it's the small modular reactors that hold enormous promise.
Traditional nuclear power plants. They're massive and custom-built facilities kept far from people and exceedingly expensive. But that may soon change. The UK is harnessing the technology that powers Britain's military submarines to power the country itself and help bring about what the government is calling the golden age of nuclear.
The clue is in the title, small modular reactors. The idea is that they're smaller than traditional nuclear power plants. So if you look at a typical one, if you're aware of one that you've seen in the UK or France or something like that, a small modular reactor might be something like 10 to 20% of the size in terms of the amount of electricity it can generate. So it's a smaller scale. And the idea is you can make a lot of them and do that in a modular fashion so that perhaps you solve some of the economic problems traditional nuclear power has had.
Built in a factory as prefabricated modules and then assembled on site, Britain chose Rolls-Royce to design its first 3. These first ones will be put together on the land of a decommissioned conventional nuclear power station. Rolls-Royce will work with the government's publicly owned Great British Energy to get up and running.
Nuclear power is right at the core of energy security, net zero, and the power system. So there's a recognition by this government and previous governments to an extent that you have to have nuclear as part of the mix. So it's never going to be the whole thing, but it has to be part of the mix.
Some traditional concerns still apply. There will be radioactive waste, less of it, but lasting just as long, which will be buried underground, and new challenges, like how to practically transfer an increased amount of dangerous material to potentially hundreds more sites securely. But the immediate concern is that no land-based SMR has been connected to an electricity grid anywhere in the world yet.
The companies are very bullish about them being cheaper and more cost-effective, but personally I want to see a reactor built to see what the evidence is for that. Can they build on time? Can they build for the budget they say they can? If they can, then I think it's quite an exciting development. But until we try, we're not going to know the answer to any of these questions.
For now, SMRs remain a dream in development, but the competition to deploy the first one is a heated one.
With the first SMR due to come online in the mid-2030s, they'll not make a dent to the UK target of a low-carbon electricity grid by the end of this decade. But nuclear power is seen as important, not just to replace fossil fuels, but to add power to a grid already at capacity, which will have to withstand the added pressures of electric cars, electric heat pumps, and expanded data centres.